Good day, everyone. I'm here with my really good longtime friend, Beth Greer, author of Supernatural Home, that I contributed to years and years ago. And we've been through several lifetimes in the last probably 20 years now, including attending the Academy of Intuition Medicine together, which we graduated from in 2015. And we're both doing what we're doing now. We decided to reconvene and see how it is that our work in this current time is complementary, which we've actually arrived at several beautiful spots where we have wonderful things to talk about and thought we'd share with you today. I've transitioned to putting a lot of my energy into teaching people how to radiate powerfully, not only to enjoy life and heal the body, but also to be safer in the world and increase capacity for dealing with craziness and stress, of which we have limitless amounts in this time. And Beth, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Beth Greer, and I wrote a book called Supernatural Home back in 2009. And the book is based on the fact that I healed myself of a chest tumor 20 years ago by making small lifestyle shifts. I discovered I had a schwannoma tumor. It was benign but very painful, and 3 top surgeons all said they needed to go. But I decided to take charge of my own health and got rid of it by looking at what I put in my body, what I put on my skin, and what I surrounded myself with in terms of cleaners and paint and also electronics. And so I just wanted to share that, Michelle put in her Bluetooth earbuds, and it kind of freaked me out a little bit because I know that they have a very high electromagnetic field and they're right by your brain. And so why don't you share how you can block that energy naturally?
Yeah. So I don't wear them often, right? I basically do what my body says. If I have an experience of distortion or weakening or something's not right, I won't do it, right? But moment to moment, I'm doing this kind of internal tracking of my nervous system's response, which is a form of pendulum, or it's a form of dowsing. It's called autonomic response testing, and I follow this for everything, meaning the overarching ethos of everything that I teach and apply to myself. It has to do with feel over formula. There can be an idea of what's right or safe or true, but what does your body say, right? Because we need that inner compass to be awake and powerful in order to navigate in the world. So oftentimes I frame, and this is so interesting that we're having this conversation today because of your focus on removing all of these toxins from the environment and how critical that is. And I agree. I keep a fairly clean home, and there's a place at which my nervous system's like, I'm just not gonna, it just doesn't feel like right to be this hyper vigilant and micromanaging of every little thing. There's a sweet spot where you find some peace and serenity and freedom and trust in your ability to bring out your power and navigate the world with some degree of safety. So in this moment, do I love these being on? It's kind of medium. It's not, if it was really feeling oppressive, I would take them off. The sound wouldn't be as good because the earphones go with the microphone, and I love the crispness of the sound. Is so lovely. But I'm going to say something, I guess, kind of controversial. A lot of people are having difficulties reacting to the shots. We're getting a lot of them. There's a lot of fear surrounding all of the stuff happening that I think doesn't really set us up for really good success. With fear basically suppresses the immune system. So I'm always trying to transmit a more internal capacity, less fear baseline. And on that note, I was working with this very high level mystic, more than one on different occasions, who said, there are people whose signals are so strong that they can take that shot or anything else and neutralize it, and then serve to neutralize it for others because of that having happened in their system.
That's
kind of
beautiful.
powerful, right?
That's really very powerful. Yeah. And what you said about fear really resonates, because I find that whenever I'm in stress, it's always the fear is underlying everything. And so I read your book, your beautiful ebook, the other day, and I started practicing some of the things that you talked about. I just want to pull it up here. Um, so you have 5 ways to for self-care wisdom, and I liked the one especially number 2, pleasure is the name of the game, and to start thinking about what's pleasurable. And so I started doing, because I was having a kind of a fearful night last night. So I started feeling like, okay, oh, my body feels good now. And I realized that the two couldn't be in the same place at the same time, that fear went away. So anyway, I wanted to thank you for that. It was very cool.
You're well, I have a few things that came in. Firstly, that fear is the opposite of love. When we're in our hearts, we're creating coherence in the entire body, and that brings our physiology into an optimal state. And there's so much science on that, right? And I'm taking some risks now, and I was touching into this, oh my gosh, am I going to be okay this morning? And then I was like, there's that voice. And I decided that the voice was really adorable and thank it for its, concern for me. And then I literally took my mind and attuned my body sense back to the deeper thing that I know is true, and the excitement that I have about pushing through we all have fears about growing and bringing ourselves out into the world, and we all have it. We all have it. So I remember all the people who told me, oh, these world experts who talk about their imposter syndrome or their, whatever challenges they had, which brings me to the second thing, what you just said had brought to mind, which was Ram Dass talking about how he went to India in the 50s with his he described this like big pile of LSD tablets, and he wanted to teach his guru about it. And the guru, apparently, as the story goes, took the entire pile, ate all of it at once, and nothing happened, right? Because
Right. Remember
he
that.
decided what his reality was. And then in later
Yes.
years, when Ram Dass had his stroke, right, and he had a very limited capacity, but where he chose to go with that in his mind was, oh, I really am not doing well. I'm in fear. I'm not healing well. I guess I have more work to do. It was a very neutral way that he chose not to. My perception was that he chose not to judge himself, but to stay in, oh, this is where God wants me now. Let me receive and be grateful in the moment.
It's beautiful. And it's also like what you were just talking about, putting your hand over your mouth and getting out of your brain. It just feels like, when we get into our bodies and get grounded with the earth and in touch with the physical part of us, it just clears up a lot of the other stuff. Because I find that when I'm in fear, it's always like some belief I have or and it's always up in my brain. So if I can always remember to kind of bring it down, and that's what's so beautiful about your work, it's just embodying our bodies, right?
It's so literal, right? Whatever you practice grows. You get more of whatever you put your attention on. And if you are in this moment, in every moment, it's so automatic for me now. I don't have to think about it. But initially, it was very difficult. I'd go in there to feel, like in my mind's eye, oh, can I perceive every cell in my body in this moment? And it was terrifying because there was a lot of unfelt stuff in there. There was a lot of patterning, unconscious patterning, and stuckness, and it took time for me to gradually soften and thaw, and then build neurons to maintain that behavior of sensory awareness in the body. It's actually neuroplastic. We need to grow neurons, and we do that in connection, most quickly in connection with one another. So say, here we are having this conversation. I'm doing this behavior. whether it's mirror neurons, or I think it's quite a bit more mechanistically than simply that your system recognizes this state. I think there's an energetic recognition. You or whoever, and if we're in a big group, we all contribute to the remembering and restoring to this feeling state. And you cannot think and feel at the same time. You cannot.
That's right.
So you just
Right.
described it.
Mhm.
You can think as an extension of the body wisdom or knowing or connection, but that's not an overthinking looping thing. That's actually where genius comes from, right? We source, our attention goes down into our systems, our tissues, and then suddenly we're connected to this infinite well of intelligence and power. It's always there. And yes, it's our native state we're born doing, and then we condition culturally away, and then coming back is not as difficult as you would think, and it can be difficult. And I found it much less difficult when I practiced collectively. So when I hit on this, I don't know, maybe 3 months ago, I started really just for fun gathering weekly to practice the skills in that book. And I found it so much more fun and less challenging, less effortful, much more playful. And then I was just talking to my group this morning. I've noticed my system has changed. When I just stop, like I will in this moment, and tune into how connected, how present am I, there's a baseline. It's just, I've cultivated this certain amount of just, I'm here now. Can I be more here? Can I go deeper? Always, but there's something that's growing. And that's why I'm so excited about this particular launching of this book, which I will share with everyone. It's a mini version of my larger book that I'm working on, and it invites people to contact me to participate. Everyone who receives it will also be invited to the practice sessions. And this is the first time in my life that I have done work that I feel is purely generative. There's 8%. There's 8%. Maybe it's the tech and things that is a little bit draining, that is a learning curve. But I finally arrived at work that is just right. It's just
Fantastic.
yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I
Thank
just
you.
wanted to add about what you're happy. What you were saying about we're conditioned away from our bodies and being in touch with it. And part of that, I think, is the food and the soil, the lack of nutrients, that we used to be eating wild game, for example, things that ran, and now the animals are caged up and they don't run, and they're missing certain, key nutrients that we need as human beings. And I don't know, I've just been playing around with that, and I'm going to be starting a garden, and well, first a community garden, but our hurricane just whipped through Florida, so hopefully when that's all settled, I want to create this community garden for people who don't have backyards to grow and get their hands in the dirt, and get all those juicy things for our microbiomes, because it just seems, just sensing you just seem to have a very healthy microbiome.
Well, I love being in the dirt. I think what you said is really, it impacted me. I was like, oh, our animals really are raised differently now. I'm careful to source my food consciously, and I can't always do it, especially because I travel. So there is, like you said, the animals aren't running, they're impacted, they're suffering, they're probably in fear, they're not malnourished themselves. And then we're not only eating their nutrients, we're eating their consciousness, we're receiving their consciousness, right? And then there's the part, returning to where we started in this conversation, where let's say your food isn't so pure, and then we pray over it. We know there's science that shows our own intention can harmonize and correct distortion in our food, which is why we give thanks, which is why we say grace, right? Thousands of years old. practices of giving thanks and coming into a really intentional and reverent experience with whatever we consume, which is in my book too, like the really, really savoring and appreciating and feeling into the nuances of the scents and the tastes and the colors, and like allowing your senses to delight in all of the aspects of everything that we're consuming. And we can't be looping up here and perseverating on worst case scenarios. Being in a sensory experience is a completely consuming really luxurious experience. It's a gift to give to ourselves.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, I've been enjoying cooking and baking lately too. It's been fabulous.
So fun.
Yeah.
Fun. I love, I have this idea in this moment of people say, oh, what should I do? Should I go for a walk after my treatment, or should I take naps, or should I do soaks? And I rarely know how to answer those questions, because I always come back with, well, what is your body really desiring? Because your desire, I name desire as a primary guiding force, is actually your intuition, right? Coming out and saying, put your attention here. It's your guidance.
Mhm.
We can have distorted desires that are maybe not so much from that connected place where we think we want, that's the place where overconsumption comes from, because we attach to what we call mimics of our true desire, that are like, oh, let me acquire things and then I'll be happy, or let me have more. But it's more about what's the true thing, and trusting your system to guide you to it.
Mhm. That's kind of how I feel about food right now, because I was living in such fear because I've had all these food allergies. And now what I decided, if I eat a food and I see how it feels, eating it, and then afterwards, how do I feel and how do I feel the next day? If it kind of feels okay, I'll have more. And if I don't, I
Huh.
say, okay, this is something that I'm not going to do anymore for a while. But I'm no longer, I was like fearing gluten, and now I'm trying some organic flour from Europe, and it seems to be okay. So that, it's trusting my body.
I had that happen yesterday. There was this beautiful homemade organic soup, and it had barley. And I thought, oh, barley has gluten. But then I was like, oh, I really feel like I almost like a magnet, right, to this soup. And then I was making this quinoa salad. And at one point my body was like, ah. And then I have my practitioner, who I often use to check my intuition, but I said, something's not right. And she's like, oh, you're reacting to quinoa. I felt it. I felt it. And I can actually feel it now. And you can too. Everyone can do this, right? The basic skills I'm talking about were how we, knew what the weather was doing, and where the predators were, and where to plant our food, and what was poisonous and what wasn't in primitive times. So these native skills were how we survived. And practicing them, they'll come back pretty quickly. It's kind of like riding a bicycle. We don't believe
Right.
that in these things because they're not discussed in typical modern culture. And what we've done is we've become so smart, we've become so intellectual, that we've rewired to running these circuits versus the sensing circuits.
Yeah,
And yeah,
absolutely.
it's really dicey. What did Tony Robbins said? If you're in your head, you're dead. Well, we're doing a pretty good job of that right now, collectively as a planet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So many people are just in their heads and in fear. I mean, gosh, you just have to turn the news on and it's just fear-based, and every commercial here in America, it's like they're selling drugs because your body is not good. It's not, you can't trust your body.
Oh
Just
my
trust us.
God.
Trust us. Right?
So,
Yeah.
so we almost can't avoid these things. Like, I was traveling recently and I never watch TV. It's so bizarre. honestly, the stuff that, but I was in a friend's home and I had this, and I thought, oh, I'm going to play a game and see if I can watch this outrageous stuff that I am not, what's the word, like desensitized to, because I just never watch it. And so I'm not on autopilot going, oh, that's normal, 50 drug side effects, in 10 seconds. No, it's not normal. The stuff they say is so not normal. But I was like, oh, can I stay in my body and listen and be judgment free? And I found myself being so entertained by the brilliance of, I was like, oh, whoever produced this is probably in my generation. Like, how is it different than the
Right.
I was just like, I was finding a way to enjoy something about the crazy and the terrible. We always have the option in any
That's a
moment
smart way
to,
to watch TV.
right, go into curiosity and amusement and amazement at what humans are capable of, in both destructive and generative ways. We're so
Yes.
we're such brilliant, miraculous beings capable of so much. So
Mm.
there was you had wanted to mention also the business that you're doing of a product called LifeWave X39, which I love. I found it did not muscle test well for me initially. And, that can change day to day. I will say that I checked 10 people and my mother was one of two for which it was really, really powerful. So I think it was you actually who gave these to her, and her lifelong, really intense case of psoriasis basically disappeared
Right.
within, I don't know, do you remember how long it
A
took?
couple of months it was, yeah.
Mm.
No, it's really the technology of the future. So ever since I had my tumor and healed, I've been looking for non-toxic ways to heal. And what I love about these patches is that they're non-transdermal. There's no medicine in them. There's nothing in them, but they're based on light frequency. So the light from our bodies will hit the patch, and there's a crystalline structure on the patch that bounces back a frequency to produce a copper peptide inside of us. And if you know about copper peptides, they produce stem cells. That's their main goal, but they also help with collagen production and all that. So if anyone is interested, they could look at my website called truevitalityproject.com, and I have a whole explanation of it with before and after pictures and all that.
So one might say, thank you. And I would say that I actually just had another reading, and I don't know why. Maybe it's because I'm in a different environment, but there was a technology. It's like the Beamer. It's an IMRS. It is an energy. And I felt so strongly after years of not touching this thing, I need to have this now. Do I know why? I had speculations, and the point is my body said, oh, you now actually want an external technology, whereas mostly for me for years, I've been doing my medicine from the inside because that was my path. So I want to say to the listeners, it doesn't matter what other people do. It doesn't matter what you did before. What is true for you now, whether or not, there's agreement or approval coming from either inside or outside. It's the practice of getting very present and receptive to your truth. And sometimes, if we are maybe disoriented enough not to be able to sense our inner compass, we have the option to receive reflection from outside, from hopefully, people find their reliable sources. I'm not a good muscle tester with pendulums, and my system won't do it, but I can feel it on the inside. And then once a month, they work with a master dowser who I try to trick her all the time. Like, I'll take one supplement and I'll give the brand name, and then I'll give the ingredients, and then I'll give the nickname. It's always the same. She's so accurate. And right. And I'm aware of, oh, I want that information to come from the inside. So I will tune in, I started doing this 20 years ago. In osteopathic practice, like my teacher would say, what do you feel? And I don't feel anything in the beginning. And I would say, well, there's this fulcrum in the space in the room. I feel this pivot point. And And almost all of the time I was right, but it was so vague to me. So our awarenesses or perception will begin very vague. We'll have a hard time trusting them. And then we just practice this very native built-in skill that we're born experts in. And I believe that just
What
realizing what we're capable of, and getting back to those native ways that really allow us to navigate the world safely is such a key, right? To not looping in the fear state, which is just no fun, and
Right.
and then doesn't resource us to be in service to others, because we're too caught up in our inundated with our own internal process.
What I wanted to say was that you were talking about practice, and I find that what really works for me is to set aside a time, whether it's, for me, it's first thing in the morning. I like to get up and look at the sun. It allows sun into my eyes because that really
Mm-hmm.
sets up melatonin and all that. But that's the time that I like to kind of focus and do that, or before bed. But pick a time that works for you, because otherwise I find that if I didn't do that, the day would go by. It's like, oh, I didn't practice today. I didn't do that. So I've made it a habit, like
I
brushing your
love
teeth,
that. I used to have to do that. And now, and I think you should have a daily practice. And I'm meditating all the time. Like, that book
Mm.
is about wiring yourself to be basically resonating and in a healing state, and in a receiving state, and a hydrating state, energy continuously expressing powerfully in your system all the time. So do I love? Oh, I do love. I've been walking up the hill with my little meditation cushion and sitting on this rock. I love it. And sometimes my body says, oh no, I'm really excited to get into writing right now. And so I leave the story behind and I let my body drive my life. And I'll be cooking in the kitchen, I'll be lifting something, and I'll be like, I'll use every cell in my body. There's such as like this delightful intentionality about it. It's like martial arts. It's like being a ninja in every moment of your life, where every bit of it is intentional and every cell in your body is participating. I went on a tangent in a way. It was related to what you said, but the reason I went into muscle testing after you talked about X39 is that I've had this thing where, oh, I don't want to use outside things. I'm not big on products. But then what I wanted to say is it can be such the right thing for your body, and for people to, if it isn't something that works for you right away, well, you'll see that the results don't come. If you don't have the ability to muscle test, the product isn't expensive. Like, you can easily try it for a month or two.
Yeah, I
And
recommend a 3 month
yeah,
trial, because that's how long for most people to notice
yeah.
changes. But for me, I could just say I just turned 70 in May, and I feel, and I think I look younger than I have in the past. You
Oh
know
my
me, right?
God.
Do I look
You look phenomenal. Um, I've never had the X39 test negatively, right? Like, there's it's not going to help you, maybe, it's not really something your body's going to receive well right now. Or it's like each thing that we allow the body, we put whether it be a homeopathic or a food or a supplement, it's like a software program the body has to download, gets to. And interestingly, right, when we're harmonized and coherent, which is what my whole book is about, we need fewer things. It's not like things will hurt you, but you don't actually necessarily need them. But the other thing is, we're in a place where if something can support the system, we're more available. It's like a non-coherent body is like a computer with the pinwheel spinning. It looks normal, but it's not really. You can't download things, you can't do many functions. But once you reset and get all of the cells communicating and harmonizing, and you're also connected to the planet and the higher realms, you're like a nice humming engine and have a lot of capacity. So I tend to, well, people will say, oh, it's going to take this many weeks to see results. I tend to get results with things and move on really fast. It actually saves me a lot of money. I don't follow the recommended doses on anything. I don't recommend
Right.
people, randomly do that if you don't know how to discern for yourself. Finding people who are really good with autonomic response testing or dowsing is it's just a great way to practice
The way
practice
I
your own
muscle,
intuition.
the
Mhm.
way I muscle test is I just ask for a yes, and it's usually forward. My whole body will go
Mhm.
forward,
Mhm.
and no is back on my heels, and it never
Mhm.
fails.
Yeah.
Like I saw some project. Oh, I want that. That looks great. And then I held it to my chest. I was like, oh, not for me now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
actually pretty innate, natural. It's our intuition, it's our instinct, it's how we would navigate the world. How I think that is basic way that we beings navigate, certainly animals, right? And us, our animal selves, prior to being so
Yeah.
civilized. Civilized. We're
Yeah.
so uncivilized, but we're so sophisticated, but we're so unsophisticated. Well, great. I'm so glad we had this time. I want to tell
Me
you,
too.
yeah, I love that our communities will be able to connect to each other through having had this conversation. I'm going to add both of our access links below, so where you'll find the link to the free ebook that I just produced, and then there are successive invitations to webinars that will come. I'm having one this Saturday, October 8th, 2022, and then I'll just have them every few weeks. And then also the links to access your work.
Great. That's good.
Yeah,
All right.
it was really
This is
wonderful
fun.
to, yeah, it was fun. It was
Yeah.
so great to reconnect this way, and we'll do it again.
Okay. That was
All
great.
right. Have a great day, love. Take care.